Bill Brown here. Sue Jones.
Present.
Jeff Marino.
Here.
Cynthia Hoyle.
Here.
Audrey Ishii.
Here.
Kara Dudek.
Here.
Annie Adams.
Here.
Nancy Westcott.
Here.
Shannon Baranek.
Here.
And did I miss anybody?
Sartak's not here.
Sorry. Sartak Prasad, not here. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. Next is additions to the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes from the previous meetings. We have a meeting November 2021 that we should have gotten minutes for. Did everybody get a chance to review those? Any corrections?
I had one small correction at where Shannon reports that the school district wanted the bike racks. I think she said there were 5 left, not that they asked for 5. And it's the minutes say they wanted 5, or that there were 5 left. I'm sorry.
Hey, Bill, can you promote John Zeman? He's going to fill in for Barb while she can't respond.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Barb says she knows she's on, but for some reason can't talk.
Huh.
It's line 36 on page 2. It said they were interested in 5 of the bike racks, but I think she actually said there were 5 left.
I think that's right. It seemed like they were going to take most of them.
Right.
Yeah, they wanted all the loops.
Okay.
Oh, what did you say, Shannon?
They wanted the loops and not the spiky ones.
So which kind are left? Just the V ones?
Yeah, just the spiky ones. There's about 5 of those. But we haven't actually done anything yet. It was more of a feeler, so we still actually have them. So.
Okay, you have all of them still. Okay.
Yeah. Which isn't reflected in the minutes. Like, that's not a change of the minutes. It's just, I'm stating that for your information.
Yeah, right. I'm just saying it that I'm pretty sure you had not said they wanted 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So it should be the Urbana School District was interested in 20 of the bike racks, leaving the 5 spiky ones. We don't have to say spiky
ones.
Well,
she didn't specify at the meeting which kind they left, I guess, but now we know.
Okay. Any other corrections? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
I move to accept the minutes as corrected. Approved.
I moved by Sue. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Jeff. Any other discussion on that? Then we could have a roll call.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Great. Okay. Bill Brown?
Yes.
Annie Adams?
Yes.
Shannon Baranek?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes. Sorry.
No problem. Kara Dudek?
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle?
Yes.
Audrey Ishii?
Yes.
Susan Jones?
Yes.
Jeff Marino?
Yes.
Nancy Westcott? Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes are approved. Next, we have public input. I know we have some presentations coming up. I don't know if anyone else is here to provide public input. If so, just click on the button at the bottom of your screen that says raise hand. I don't see anybody. So it looks like most of those people are probably going to be doing the presentations later. Okay, seeing no public input. Move on to unfinished business. these first, well, all this really, all the unfinished business we started talking about last meeting in November. Remember I presented a list of recommendations we had made by motion, and then also some that we had talked about during meetings but didn't make motions to actually make a recommendation. And so we talked about adding those officially to our recommendations. So in order to do that, we would have to vote on each one tonight if we wanted to have them be 2021 approvals, recommendations. But all these are just things typically in the annual report that comes out in January or February that we provide to the city council. We list any motions that we made that were recommendations, and we talk about other stuff too. We'll list what we talked about and presentations that were made and things like that. But a big part of the report is any motions that we made that had official recommendations. So tonight we're going to look at, I can pull it up here, I think. Yeah. Tonight we'll look at the 4 recommendations that were in that report last week that we hadn't voted on before. So we hadn't made any motions or voted on these. And then I listed justifications. Some of those I had last week, and others I added with input from you guys from email. So the first one is increased staff support for BPAC, and the justifications were a safe bicycle and pedestrian system is important for a healthy, vibrant, equitable community. By ordinance, we already have a voting member from Public Works that provides valuable technical input. But some of the comments I got from email was that formerly there'd been support for BPAC through the planning division. So, and they thought that worked out pretty well. And having extra actually allocated time for that person so that they could provide more support and have time to apply for grants and things like that. And then in comparison to other city commissions that have dedicated staff support. So any questions, discussion, opinions on that one?
I don't think the teacher is going to get very far because Carol's already outright said she's not going to authorize BPAC support, and community development right now has very few people. They don't even have a director. So I don't think you're going to get any traction on this one.
Okay.
I would just like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we request an increase in staff support for BPAC to support our work to create safe bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, which is important for a healthy, vibrant, and equitable community.
I second that motion.
Okay, been moved by Cynthia and seconded by Sue. Any more discussion on that?
Just for clarification, we're requesting that, or this motion is going to City Council, and then City Council would incorporate this into their council goals. Okay.
Potentially. I mean, I think our annual report just lists in general motions and recommendations. I don't know if they aren't specifically to City Council. They could be to city staff. It's just basically recommendations for the city. And in one of these later, it's actually probably more of a recommendation to Traffic Commission. So I don't know if it's our specific role to figure out who the recommendation is for. It's the recommendation for the city. But in this case, I would agree that would probably be the best way for it to go would be to City Council to take it up and budget for it. Does that make sense?
It's not that we don't have, budget availability or managing. It's we don't have people.
People, yeah.
Like right now, community development is very stretched thin. Like Kat Trotter, who is here tonight, I'm going to sing her praises, works like crazy on so many different things. Like it would be unfair to task them with things via city council orders when they're already struggling to do their current essential city duties.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, it's not our job to try and figure out for city council how they provide the staff support, but we need to submit the request for staff support in order to do the job that we have been tasked with when this commission was created. And I don't know how they want to do that, but I think the request needs to go forward. And that if that means hiring additional staff, hiring a consultant, that's their job to figure that out.
And I think our recommendations shouldn't necessarily be dependent on whether or not they are passed. I think we need to say that this is what we need.
Mm-hmm.
It's not our goal to, well, that's what I think. I don't think we should decide on it whether or not it will be passed or not.
So yeah, make it more of a long-term goal or whatever term goal that can be, whenever it can be accomplished. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I think it's important to have on record that we asked for this. I think it's important. Every year we have asked for this. Every year I have been on BPAC, we have asked for this. I think it's important to just continue to ask for this. Sooner or later, we will get leadership that will find a way to help us out. And until that time, all we can do is ask. And there's nothing wrong with asking, I mean, if we think we need the help and the city right now doesn't think they have the space or time, that's fine. But all we can do is ask.
Yeah, I don't know what relevance this would have, but I'm the longest member of BPAC, and I went back and reminded myself by going through the old minutes and checking how this came about that we have no staff support. And it's interesting because we did always have staff support from planning. We had people who attended who gave reports for many years. And at the time that Rebecca Bird left, Kevin Garcia stepped in and he was there for quite a while. We were rarely formally informed that the staff person had changed, but people kept coming. And I believe, as Shannon has pointed out, that it's coming from the top, that there's a feeling that staff should not be spending their time on BPAC. I know that we have had, in looking at the last couple of years, Lily has attended many meetings, and I don't know if she's receiving any credit for that. I mean, we're not really asking for that much. We're asking for what has been there all along that has been removed. And I think in part because the commission has become fairly activist. And so they're saying, well, if they'll step up and do the job themselves, I guess we don't have to. Well, we still do need literature printed. We still do need connections to the right people to get approvals, to get websites done and so on. Even just because the commission has become relatively activist, and I know it was not considered much of a commission in the past, is not a reason that the staff support can just be completely dropped. And if we have to have a meeting with the executive city staff in order to discuss this, how this came about, then that's what we need to do. But I think that there are staff that are interested. I understand that they're overburdened with way too many things. And they have to receive credit for attending the meetings and for what they do, whatever coordination they do.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I guess we're ready to vote. Could we have a roll call?
Okay, Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams,
Yes.
Shannon Baranik,
No.
Kara Dudek,
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishii,
Yes.
Susan Jones,
Yes.
Jeff Marino,
Yes.
Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. That motion carries. Next one is recommendation: pursue projects that require intergovernmental cooperation, for example, as in connectivity measures that cross jurisdictions. and combine forces on those to apply for Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program ITEP funding. The justification for that one was that, at least in recent years, ITEP scoring process favors projects with intergovernmental cooperation. Vital connectivity issues remain because many of the easy projects where city already owns all the right of way have already been done, and staff has not been available to pursue more complicated projects. So I can see Shannon voting for this one, voting against this one already. But number 3, many such projects eligible for ITEP funding are already identified in city, park district, and other plans. So that's just saying that a lot of the work has been done on those, that at least they're identified, but they need to be prioritized more, is the recommendation. So discussion on that one?
Well, I will just say, Bill, that the 2 Safe Routes to School grants that the city did receive successfully in the past, I believe were successful in part because there was an intergovernmental approach. And for example, I would include the projects that they were including as part of my non-infrastructure grant. So we mentioned each other's projects and the coordination that we were going to pursue. So I think that that's probably key to success. And I'm sure that's also true with the ITEP projects, that they do get extra credit for doing that. And there's some other things that we could probably do to increase our competitiveness with those grants. But I was wondering why we felt we needed to send this forward as a recommendation, Bill. I understand your justification here, but it seems like that would be a given that would happen.
Well, I think the last one for Baker Lane, although it would involve Park District property, it wasn't really the interjurisdictional. It wasn't something that required cooperation, more like it would with township or U of I property, where there's actually more resistance. I guess we get along pretty good with the Park District, but trying to get together with some of these others, it's harder. And it seemed like there were other projects that they avoided because that one was easier. And I know you liked the Baker Lane project, and I think it would have been a good project, but I think in the past, especially like on Florida Avenue, that one we had tried once before and didn't get very far with it. But sometimes you just have to keep trying, like they did on First Street. It took 2 or 3 tries to get that one. So I don't know. It just I don't know if there was. It felt like there wasn't the recognition that those kind of projects get extra scoring points and might be worth putting the effort into it. I don't know. Anybody else?
Kara has her hand up.
Oh, I can't. I only see like 5 people now because I'm sharing my screen. Sorry, go ahead, Kara.
I was going to suggest that something about working it into like the capital improvement program, what these recommended projects are, could be more effective, because even though the Park District likes to work with the city and other jurisdictions, we're not going to like hear that there's a round of ITEP available, bump the money from an existing high priority project and apply for it within a couple of months. But if it was projected out on the 5-year capital improvement plan or something, it may be easier to coordinate.
Yeah, we don't tend to put these in the capital improvement because they come up as they come up. So like the Baker's Lane one was actually kind of last minute, and Rita Black, who put together for us at RPC, was actually the one that suggested actually make the path not 100% straight and veer into Weaver Park a little bit. So that was, basically a last minute curveball. Like we really don't have any long-term plans for certain projects on grants. We do them as we have availability. So, I mean, we do take into account like where they are. Like Baker's Lane was an underserved area, which is why I picked that one over connecting a path up through Behringer Commons. That's not an underserved area. So, and the Florida Avenue one right now is not also an underserved area, even though it touches Orchard Downs. The word that is actually just north of Florida Avenue really skews it to be, this is not an underserved area. So that's actually why we scrapped that one this year and went with Baker's Lane. We focus more on the underserved areas first rather than intergovernmental agreements, because currently ITEP moving around to points is focusing on underserved areas.
Yeah, they actually have a tool online where you can put in the path and it'll show you which census tracts, what the median income is and everything. And Florida actually did rank pretty high because of the student population and the adjacent census tracts. I put it in that formula and it actually ranked better than Baker's Lane, but
it didn't actually when Rita did her analysis.
Okay,
we had
I'll have
more
to
further things along.
forward
It
that
actually
one.
did skew the other direction.
Okay, are there any thoughts on just
Bill, I wanted to add that I do think that Kara's point makes some sense in the sense that I don't know if the CIP is the right spot, but I do think that being more strategic in the ITEP nominations would make sense. So like I think the point of like trying to get into a cycle. So I think what happens a lot with ITEP grants is that, you know, there's a project that is lacking funding, and at the last second, they apply for an ITEP grant, and you know, may or may not be a strong nomination, or you know, because of the lack of time, it could be weaker. But if you're thinking about it 2 years in advance, and I mean the ITEP grants happen every year, so you know that when those deadlines are going to be. So you know, going through the bike plan or the other existing plans and looking at, you know, what projects are hanging out there that we can do some you know, minimal amount of engineering on and putting together an application. And that way we're getting ready for this application of the ITEP grant, you know, a year and a half from now or whatever it is. I guess I don't know how to reword it, but just being strategic with how that cycle in the application process is approached, rather than, you know, finding some small project and then applying for it at the last second.
We do also have to be strategic, and we have to pay RPC to put these together. So it's not free on the city front, even if we do or do not get it. So we happen to, for this past one, we also happen to have spare RPC dollars budgeted. That's not always true going forward, and RPC is also excessively short-staffed currently, and to the point where I'm not sure they actually even have capacity to take more studies. Like, they're working on our Florida Avenue one, they're doing a bunch for the county and other cities. Like, we are at the mercy of RPC availability on these two. That is yet another factor into a 900 factor grant.
But I still think it's worth doing the long-term planning and thinking ahead instead of resigning ourselves to, we just can't do long-term planning. You know, it's worth kind of talking about them.
If you can find us a grant writer, that'd be great.
Yeah, that worked for the fire department, actually. They came up with a grant writer for a grant they applied for earlier this year or late last year, and got a pretty good grant. Okay, well, I'm okay with skipping this one for now. I do like the wording, be more strategic in ITEP grant proposals or something, but it sounds like we don't really have much consensus on this. Is that okay with everyone?
Bill?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just at some point, even if it's a BPAC thing, looking at high priority projects in the bike plan and seeing which funding sources or grant cycles they could be applicable to. And so we're not asking anyone to write a grant application or put a lot of work into it. And it's something that, I mean, I only have a little bit of like experience with these grants, but it could be a one document thing where we know what is relevant to which grant program.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think I'd have to double check in the bike plan. I don't think it lists potential sources, but I don't think it actually ties sources to projects.
Yes, well, it does recommend funding. And so as the two student interns work on that, that's something they can highlight for us.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, let's move on to the third one. Increase annual budget for sidewalks and paths maintenance. This is maintenance, not new stuff, to at least 50% of the annual cost identified in the CIP. And that was 500,000. So 50% would be 250,000. And currently they budget 120,000. So bumping it up, basically doubling it, but still only being halfway to where it needs to be for sustainable maintenance. And establish an improvement plan based on sidewalk conditions and gaps identified in the sidewalk inventory. Because currently we're told that sidewalk repairs and maintenance mostly done by on a complaint basis. When people complain, they'll go out and check it out. So justification, city code specifies one of our duties is to make recommendations on the CIP, capital improvement plan. Current sidewalk maintenance is mostly responsible to complaints, which are more often from areas and people with access to public officials or who have come to expect quick response. And 3, an adequately funded systematic plan will reduce inequities in sidewalk maintenance and improvements based on need. So yeah, we talked about this a little bit when Shannon gave us an overview of the capital improvement plan in June, but we didn't make any motions on it. Any thoughts on this one?
So, Bill, I'll make a motion, and I want to add something to it. So I would like to recommend that we increase the annual budget for sidewalks and bike path maintenance. No, I'm sorry, for sidewalks and path maintenance to at least 50% of the annual costs identified in the capital improvement plan. And to establish an improvement plan based on sidewalk conditions and gaps identified in the sidewalk inventory and the pedestrian master plan, and input through a process similar to the one that we currently have for the equity project. I would like to add in that public input process as part of that program.
Sidewalk maintenance. Okay.
I want to add that currently the 120,000 that is sidewalk plus paths. They're actually 2 separate line items. And we are actually currently working on a sidewalk cyclical program. Our transportation tech is spearheading it. He's putting together quite a bit of data that he's gotten from RPC, the county, CD, stuff, the bicycle master plan, the pedestrian master plan. I mean, the man is working with a whole bunch of data. John Zeman, myself, we've also cycled in Kat Trotter, Lily Wilcock for some CD input, and also Adam Shaw, who's our tech currently in charge of right-of-way stuff, sewer stuff, and sidewalk maintenance. So we are working on a plan. Right now, I don't really have much info because it is new and the tech is putting together a lot of information. I don't want him to get sidetracked on things right now. So I really like to keep it narrow at the moment so we can establish a baseline. Like, we are not open to suggestions. We actually have a whole spreadsheet from community people who write in, call in. Everything is logged in the spreadsheet. So that will also go into our matrix of what we want to fix. We're prioritizing based on, various data-driven things like gaps, condition, ADA ramps. So we are working on this one.
Okay, cool. Sounds like our recommendation will align well with what you're already doing then. Does that make sense?
I would like to not have that public input part, because while we do it by default because of people who call in, it's not really open to like public hearings and public input like say the master plans were. It's a much different thing, especially because we have to bid these projects out. So and we are also going to keep in mind and see how we can tie in Carol's equal money, because if say a whole bunch of people are like, here's a whole bunch of sidewalk stuff, that might actually help us, do a bigger plan one year, maybe dedicate everything for sidewalks, and that's public input there as well. But I wouldn't necessarily tie the public input to it, because that can actually handicap getting this further along.
The public input I was suggesting was in the same process that we currently have with the program that's entirely online, that people are submitting forms with input for locations. So it's very similar to what you currently have, only having more output. But the problem I have with the current system is only people who are very savvy about how the city works. No, to put in a request for maintenance on a sidewalk. Whereas the program that's in place now, they've been pushing out with some social media. It's not public hearings. It is purely public input via.
We get so many
that
phone calls
website.
from the public and Public Works. People do know how to find us. I find that a little disingenuous saying that you have to be savvy to find Public Works. We even get
Well-
Public Works phone calls for other urbanas across the country. So
Well, it's not disingenuous, Shannon, because I had an intern who was working for me who used a wheelchair. And in order to get to MTD, he was using the city sidewalk on the north side of University. And one day he told me he'd gone through 2 sets of tires on his wheelchair because the condition of the sidewalk was so bad. And he had absolutely not a clue that he could go and put in a request for the sidewalk to be fixed. I told him about it. He went and did it, and the city fixed it, almost immediately, but he had no idea. And he was someone who desperately needed that sidewalk fixed. Yes, there are people who figure it out, but there are also a lot of people who have no idea that there's any such process for giving input.
And people to call for the wrong Urbana, they've obviously not really figured it out either.
well, no, those are people calling for like Urbana, Iowa. Like they want to talk about Urbana, Iowa, and they want to talk Urbana, Iowa with Public Works, but our Public Works is really good on the search engine optimization, and we come to the top of the list. So
Good point.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Shannon. I think as far as, if this is for maintenance, it seems like it should be based on the needs. And one of the reasons for making it a systematic program would be to basically equalize people's access or abilities to provide public input. So even though it's a different mechanism for the equity projects, I think the big plus with the equity projects is really the targeted low-income areas and other areas that have been ignored or not not kept up as well. But a lot of that does come down to who's complaining the loudest and everything. So I don't know. I think I'd be fine with it without the extra input. We still have the citizens' voice, the regular methods of providing input on infrastructure needs. So we don't have a second yet. Do you want to keep the extra input on there, Cynthia, and go for a second, or do you want to take the extra input off? Cynthia?
It looks like Annie has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Annie?
Hi, yeah, I understand what Cynthia's concern is about people not being clear exactly how to contact the city. I'm concerned if we add that into here, though, it's going to confuse a bit the language. And something again that I think we're all responding positively to with this equity grant funding is the city really, I actually really trust our city to justly distribute the funds to neighborhoods. Yeah, they have to know that there are issues with those sidewalks, but I've sat through enough like city council meetings where it is just the people that yell the loudest that get their sidewalks fixed. It's the people that show up and organize instead of like actually addressing real need. Like not that their need wasn't real, but like trying to take a more equitable approach. So I don't know if there's a workaround in this language, and it just sounds like, what Shannon's saying is they're hopefully maybe going to use some of that grant funding, the social media work they're doing and all that stuff for this. So it looks like we might actually get this to happen, which is really exciting. So for me, I kind of would prefer if I kind of like it the way it is, just because I want it to just go through. And I worry if we add in that additional language, it's just going to kind of be a little more confusing. But I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. It's good. So that's my response there.
Well, if someone wants to offer a second without the input part there, they can, but without a second, we don't have anything to talk about.
Okay, so is there, so it sounds like Cynthia's willing to drop the input part. Is there a second to it?
I will second that.
There was a second from, was that Sue?
Yes.
Okay, so seconded by Sue. Any discussion on the motion without the extra input part?
I'll just say that I agree with kind of with what Annie was saying, that this piece of it's a little more technical, and that you can, RPC has done the sidewalk grading for like all the sidewalks in Urbana. So, you know, you can go through and just create a matrix of, you know, what sidewalks are prioritized based upon what condition they're in and how old they are and where the gaps are and the length of the gaps, and then come up with a plan. So you don't need as much. So to Annie's point, yeah, city staff can handle that and do a great job and don't need as much public input.
Thanks. And I just add, even though Shannon said that they are already doing it, I think having a recommendation is good, because you never know if somebody's going to start targeting that program for reductions or something, and say, oh, we don't need to put all that effort into it. We know where the problems are. But by having our recommendation, it'll kind of reinforce that we really think that it can be handled well in a systematic way.
And Bill, I would like to say, you know, people are always stunned when I tell them how little we spend on sidewalk. I mean, it's really is just such a small amount of the city budget. So I do think it's good. And that, again, so it's an awareness raising, and it's like, yeah, this, you know, that's why I do think, again, it's just important to ask, and it's important to state it. That's all.
Okay. Any more discussion, or should we? Looks like we could go for a roll call.
I actually have access to talk to you, I believe, now.
Hi, Barb.
Hi.
All right.
Finally. Thank you, John, for
Yeah,
filling
thanks,
in.
John.
I will step down gladly.
I'm sorry.
No
I've
problem.
been trying for quite a long time here to get in. And I will go ahead and read the roll if you would like.
Yes, please.
Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams,
Yes.
Shannon Baranik,
Yes.
Kara Dudek,
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishii,
Yes.
Susan Jones,
Yes.
Jeff Marino,
Yes.
and Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. And then this is the last one that we hadn't made any motions on to discuss. Evaluate crosswalk visibility and usage at Washington and Race, and consider use of a triangular crosswalk as illustrated in the IDOT training materials. I think everyone was here for that meeting, or if you weren't, hopefully you had a chance to review it on the video, but this is the intersection at the north end of Race Street by the high school there, where all of Race was replaced about 6 years ago. And the crosswalk was revamped to make it more compliant with the ADA, with the right angle crossings and everything. And we had someone come with public input and show us pictures of having, from some directions, it was hard to see the pedestrian on the side of the corner because they were farther from the corner. There was a crash there in 2015, a fatal crash where the man was in the new crosswalk after it had been done. And then I found a presentation on the IDOT website with some training material that showed one potential way to handle things when you aren't quite sure, you know, how to make it possible for people to use in a more natural way, as well as improve visibility at hard corners like that. It's just to paint out the whole crosswalk. So it'd be real wide at the corner where they moved it back from the corner. It would be about, I don't know, probably 15 feet wide, and then it would narrow down to about 5 feet wide on the opposite side. So that people who still were used to it being at the corner could still use it the way they used to use it without being out of the crosswalk. And also all those big wide stripes will improve visibility, hopefully. So yeah, the justifications, I think I talked about that. A fatal crash, it's a natural way to use it, and it's a low cost. So the potential solution or improvement. So this is one of those recommendations. It's not really to anybody in particular. I assume, I mean, we did submit it to Traffic Commission, and maybe eventually they'll get time to talk about it, but it was something we spent some time on here. So if anybody wants to make that recommendation, we could do that.
I'll just go ahead and say it now. Traffic Commission will not be advancing this submission any further. Right now in the mail, I believe, is our response to Bill on it. It's multiple pages. We've explained why we will not be advancing it, so it will not be changing.
Okay, does anybody want to make this recommendation?
To make the recommendation.
Who is that?
It's Sue. Sue
Oh,
made
okay.
the.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick question before we go ahead? And I don't know what the justification is that's in the mail to you, Bill. But I do wonder too, this could be a really nice space to, for an Urbana Arts grant to do like a mural, like a mural crosswalk space. But again, we'll have to see why it was not allowed. And that would probably not be part of the recommendation. So I will second this.
Okay, and our recommendation was just to evaluate it. So even though this may be, we haven't seen the response, so.
It has been evaluated, and
Okay.
I mean, you can recommend me to evaluate it again, but that unfortunately will not be happening.
Well, I'd say it was probably evaluated because we recommended it, but never voted on it. So if anybody wants to vote on it, we could do that.
Right, it was an oversight that we didn't vote on it. So I think we should just go ahead and correct that oversight.
Okay, then it'll be, I mean, it's up to you guys.
Right,
Okay.
I mean, it should have been stated that it was coming from BPAC and we just failed to vote on it. But I think we did want it to be evaluated, and apparently it has been evaluated, so we can go ahead and vote on it.
Okay, so there's been a motion and second. Any other discussion on that?
I would just say that I think it's important to formally adopt it as a recommendation, just because down the road, if there's another accident or something and somebody wants to go back and say, well, the BPAC voted in favor of evaluating it and the Traffic Commission still, denied it or whatever. I just think it's important to go on the record and say that we did it.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So could we have a roll call on that one?
Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams,
Yes.
Shannon Baranik,
Abstain.
Kara Dudek,
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishii,
Yes,
Susan Jones,
Yes.
Jeff Moreno,
Yes.
Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. And that concludes the items I had. So those four motions will, or three of those that we approved will be included in the annual report. And I'll just give a brief update. I didn't notice it was actually on the agenda. I wasn't planning on presenting anything new for the annual report, but I plan to have that ready probably at our next meeting, whether that's January or February. And then we can make changes in that if you want, and do our usual overview of the annual report, and then present it probably in March or April to City Council as usual.
I'm sorry, I missed something that you said at the beginning of this statement.
Oh, the annual report, it's actually on the agenda as item E under unfinished business.
Okay.
I didn't have anything new to report on it. Normally we do that early in the next year. But our motions that we made will be part of that. So I think there were 3 or 4 or 5, something like that, that we had already made before that we talked about, that I showed you last time, and then these new 3 that we just formally approved. So
Which we actually had talked about earlier. We just didn't
Right.
vote on them. Yeah.
So that'll all be in the annual report, plus plus our usual updates on other things we talked about. And if you guys have anything else interesting that you want me to include that we talked about, we could do that too. Just, yeah, let me know.
I was gonna say, Bill, I've just been trying to loop back to what Cynthia said, and I don't know if at some point we can somehow talk about this or bring it up, and I know Shannon has said there's an easy way to report these issues, but maybe one of the recommendation, maybe it's actually a unique recommendation, which is, because I asked about, I made a recognition, Audrey, on the street you live on, there are trees that block an intersection. There are bushes in a neighbor's yard, and I sent that to the city, and I've never heard back. I have no idea like what's happened. Those trees are still blocking. I even said, if it's not illegal for them to have their trees there, please just let me know, and I will, knock on their door and let them know. People can't see the stop sign and cars are running. I've almost gotten hit a couple times because of it. So bottom line is there just like a better way to report? Cynthia, is that more what you're interested in, trying to figure out a way for the city to have an easier and better way to report sidewalks and streets or needs in that manner? I don't know. Maybe that's like a bigger question than just that little bit there.
Who did you contact? Because Cynthia had emailed me about the Meyer bike path, and I sent Jason Aerosmith on that, and he had it fixed in like a week. And he's one of our building safety people.
Mhm.
I emailed the city on the help on the website, the email that you email on the home page. And I sent the address of the house. They were doing a bunch of the I3 broadband was doing infrastructure there, and they just put in new sidewalks there. They put in new like accessible ramps. It's like, but it's just and Audrey, you should know the street. It's like when you're biking towards Green Street, there's a huge bush that has grown like this like hedge, and you cannot see the stop sign around the corner. And so cars just have to pull all the way forward in order to see if there's any oncoming traffic.
Can you send me a picture of that? Because if there's trees blocking our stop signs, Arbor will also come out and trim those. We had one near Lincoln Square that was like that.
Yeah, that's what was weird about it. It's like, I was like, in the past, I've seen these things taken care of really fast, and it's like, basically it's just a giant bush in their yard, but it's like less than 5 feet, it's a very tiny, anyway, but yeah, I can send you, Shannon, what that information is when I find it. I'll send it to you.
They do respond really quickly. Recently with the fiber optic cable installation, they had both sides of Anderson, both sidewalks on both sides were blocked, and there were no signs telling pedestrians they were blocked. My son contacted me and was concerned, and so I told him to go through the city's website and submit it. And after that, one side was open, and they now had a little sign saying sidewalk closed ahead. So I've always had quick response.
It could just be like, because you know how you get a drop down, you got to choose a drop down. I maybe just chose a drop down that went to a dead box, like I think I chose traffic.
In case they need to fix it.
I maybe chose traffic or something. But yeah, I'll send you an email about it. It's basically the city put in brand new sidewalk accessibility, like ramps up and down, all sorts of stuff has happened there. And I kept thinking, and those bushes are going to go. Nope. All right. Thanks, Shannon.
Okay. So next is reports of city officials, staff, and reports of committees. Shannon, do you have any more staff reports?
I already told you about the sidewalks, and actually, John Ziedman, who happens to be here tonight, will be taking over the public works position on BPAC for a while, just to give me a break since I've been doing it since Craig left. So,
okay, cool.
I'm not sure when the full transition will take place. I'm still giving him a chance to back out. He's been here a couple times. So, but yeah, he's definitely probably gonna have come to me with questions. So like, I'm not gonna just throw him to into it with no knowledge. So, but he volunteered, so I'm gonna take him up on it and take a break a little bit. So,
okay.
Shannon, thank you. Thank you for all your work and all the time that you've spent on this. I know it's after 5 p.m. and you show up and you come and you have opinions and ideas and thoughts, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Welcome, John. Look forward to seeing you at our meetings. Cynthia?
Just a quick update from the Vision Zero Committee. We now have a flyer that we can use to push out the program to the community. And after the first of the year, I want to work with the mayor's office, Bill, and we can chat about how to do this to see if we can do a social media blitz and encourage more people to give us input and push that out there a bit more. And sort of in connection with that, I wanted to say we are doing some media push out for the Snow Angel program, the volunteer snow removal program. And this year we use the grant funding that we're wrapping up right now to buy some shovels and hats and gloves. So if you know of a social service organization that would like to volunteer as a group to do snow removal, it's all up on our website, and we can help equip, like sororities or fraternities or high school groups, any other kind of group that needs some equipment in order to be able to go do that. Of course, that is with the expectation that at some point there will be snow of enough accumulation to need removal. So that's, but we have the equipment and the ability to distribute it.
Cynthia, this is Barb.
Yeah.
Do you mind telling me what the website address is, and then I can put that in the minutes?
Yeah, I can send it to you. How about that?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Any other, anything else from city officials, staff reports, anything? I know, sir, the council approved several street improvements that also incorporate bicycle lanes and things like that. So like South Philo Road, that'll be redone. Windsor Road from Race to the city limits. I did have a question, maybe Shannon, I noticed on Windsor Road, on the Urbana side, there's a rumble strip, but then once you get to the city line, the rumble strip disappears. Do you know if you're planning on putting the rumble strip back in on Windsor Road?
I'm not sure at this time, but we did consult with Champaign just to see if Champaign was planning any changes to their portion of Windsor Road, so that we could match up, basically, so we didn't have some kind of weird complete discontinuity besides the rumble strips. And Champaign has zero plans to do anything to Windsor Road the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm not sure about the rumble strip, but I know the geometry of everything is pretty much is going to stay the same as it is. So.
I guess with the rumble strip, I mean, I don't know what the warrants and everything are for it, but I understand it's mostly to keep cars from going off the road, and that can help prevent accidents or crashes with bicycles too. But it seems like it's more like where you need it more in long stretches where people might drift more or be playing with their phone or falling asleep or something. This is like a quarter mile, and they really are kind of inconvenient when you're on your bicycle to get out of the bike lane if you need to turn left, say coming up from Champaign, coming up the hill on Windsor and wanting to turn left on Lincoln or on Race, you'd have to get out of the rumble strip, get across the rumble strip. And there are little gaps, but it's just one more thing you have to kind of watch while you turn around and look for traffic and potentially hit the rumble strip. So as a cyclist, unless they're really needed, I prefer not to have them. I don't know how other people feel.
Well, the data is abundantly clear that they have a huge impact on reducing fatalities from people running off the road. And if we had had those on High Cross Road, Matt would still be here because the young woman who hit him was downloading ringtones. And so I think they're really critical, especially on a high-speed road like Windsor. The issue is those rumble strips were put in quite a while ago, And so if they reinstall them, they'll want to use current guidance in terms of the gaps, the spacing and the size of the gaps that Ride Illinois and other organizations worked with IDOT on making sure that that was incorporated into the design requirements for rumble strips, that be done so that it's convenient for cyclists to merge in and out.
Yeah, I definitely see the use for them on that stretch of High Cross where Matt was hit. But I still have a hard time seeing the value on such a short stretch of road like that.
Well, people travel similar speeds along Windsor as they do on High Cross Road. People go 50 and 55 miles an hour along that stretch. It's built to highway standards. So because of the high speeds on that road, I try not to use it, even though there is a bike path there, because once, as you noted, when you get to the Champaign part of there's not that additional degree of safety.
Okay. Yeah, and I forget what the other project was, but Colorado Avenue doesn't currently have any bicycle infrastructure. I think our bike plan had recommended a bike lane for a block or two on the easternmost section of it. And then they would also be redoing some ramps and things like that along the way. So there are some pretty good improvements coming in the next year or so.
Yeah, and I just want to add, when we hired the consultants for both Windsor project, and we're calling it the Philo Triangle just for ease. It's Philo, Anderson, Colorado, and that's a lot to say when you're calling it. So if you hear me say Philo Triangle or hear John say Philo Triangle, that's the project we're referring to. We did give our consultants information from both the bike and ped master plans when we hired them as part of the project scope. So those were taken into account. And yeah, so the ped master plan had sidewalk ramps and gaps, and then the bike plan, of course, had Colorado. And actually, I think I recommended, because it was only a block of bike lane, basically, to still do some arrows on the rest of it to kind of add to this is a bike way, even if we can't do the bike lane the whole length.
Yeah, that's great, because I think the bike lane only goes to Anderson, but it is a great cross-town route to get over to Vine, and then if you just want to ride 50 feet on Vine, you can go down Montclair and get over to Race, and there's bike lanes on Race. So it's a really convenient route, and that is a underserved area that it comes from. So thanks, Shannon. Okay, so we'll move on to new business. We need to officially approve the 2022 calendar. I can bring that up. Thanks. Where is it? Yeah. So this just lists all the third Tuesdays of every month. I think at first I thought there'd be a conflict like with Martin Luther King Day, because the council would meet on Tuesdays, but I guess it doesn't matter if we meet at the same time as council. We've done that before. I think when I was on council, maybe we might have changed our meeting or something, but if we aren't going to be back in person in January, but if we were, we could meet upstairs. And if we aren't, I assume city has capacity to handle 2 Zoom meetings at once. So,
We'll have to, Bill, we'll have to check on that. But
okay.
if it doesn't work out, then we may have to reschedule. That's, I think, the only meeting that has any kind of a conflict.
Okay. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward, just the third Tuesdays every month. We may not, we may end up canceling some of these, but you just officially have to have a approved list at the beginning so that you don't have to notice each of these like a week in advance or something. I forget what the actual rule is, but so we just need a motion to approve our schedule of meetings for 2022.
So moved.
Is that Audrey?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by
Sue Jones, I will second it.
and Sue seconds. Any discussion? If not, could we have a roll call?
Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams,
Yes.
Shannon Baranik,
Yes.
Karen Dudek,
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishii,
Yes.
Susan Jones,
Yeah.
Jeff Marino,
Yes.
Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Next we have Cynthia. You had a update on some research you did on making bike lanes more visible near bus stops. Is that right?
Yes, I have a presentation.
Do you
For
want? We didn't do this at the beginning, but I wonder if maybe we should let the students go next in case they need to leave, or
I have 10 slides.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead then?
Here, it's not too big of a presentation. And then let me see if I can get this to go. There we go. So Nancy mentioned issues that she had with being able to cross the bike path by Illini Union on Green Street. And so she and I have been having conversations, and she sent me her thoughts, and I did some work, and so I have some things to share with you all. So these were some of the concerns that were raised. She raised some additional concerns, but these are the ones that I pulled together for this discussion, that there's a lack of contrast between the sidewalks and the bike path on Green Street in some locations. And the MCOR project originally had planned for more green paint on these locations with high pedestrian volumes, but it was cut due to budget shortfalls. So that didn't get put back in at any point. The lack of pavement markings or signage, especially at Illini Union and the Transit Plaza, has created issues for cyclists and pedestrians. And pedestrians with visual limitations don't even realize they're crossing a bike path, walking from the bus shelter to the sidewalk in front of the Union. And I'm sorry Sartuk's not here, because when the bike path goes back behind the bus stops, that's the university's part of the project. And I've got some pictures for you. One of the things when I went and looked, and I don't know how all of us missed this somewhere along the way, this was an error that was made. There's no truncated dome. That's that bumpy surface that is put in for those with visual impairments to cross, to know they're coming to a street or other crossing, that they need to stop and be careful and listen for traffic. And there's not one on the south side of the bus stop as you're departing the bus. I biked around today. I didn't go to every bus stop in the MCOR project, but I biked around and they're on both sides everywhere else. But it was very interesting that we missed that one, which is a really critical location. Also, Nancy mentioned the lack of stop announcements on buses, and I'll talk some more about that. And that the audio signals at signalized intersections for people with visual impairment are different in the cities and at different intersections. And so having some consistency in that would be helpful for them. Also, she mentioned that there's no place that you can go online to find information about all of this for those with handicaps and various kinds, particularly those with visual impairments. And so we'll talk about that some more too. So here's a picture of, this is actually Google Earth. And you can see that there's the truncated dome on that side. There's one here for, where the street starts. There's one, it's missing here. And so if you're visually impaired, you just don't know that you're getting ready to cross at that location. The other, I just did some additional close-ups here so that you can see. And so you're coming from the east at the shelter. There's no sign. The pavement marking doesn't indicate it. There are these faded crosswalk stripes, but there's a lot of people there, you're probably not even going to be able to see those. And so here's another view. And the other thing that's interesting is about where these were located is it's behind the bus stop. And it's not next to where the pedestrians are. The location of this is not logical. It should be where, it's visible and where the pedestrians are likely to wander into the bike path. Right here, they're not very likely to wander onto the bike path. So having all of this area be green would be helpful. And to help you visualize what this would look like to some degree is this a visual from the NACTO Transit Street Design Guide out of Portland. And as you can see, it's very clear. You've got the truncated domes on each side. And this is a two-way one, so they have the arrows pointing which way you should be going. I went over and looked at the one on the Transit Plaza on Wright Street. Not too long ago, someone was complaining to me about this bus stop and told me that whoever designed it must have been on drugs. And I laughed and said, well, I was one of the people who worked on that, which of course, then they were a little embarrassed. But I did notice, you can see here that we have the truncated domes, as you're coming out and going off. So I don't know what happened over in front of the Union. But the thing that struck me, and I don't know why I hadn't noticed it before, is there's absolutely no delineation here that tells you this is the bike path. There are no markings. This is on the east side. And you can see there's just nothing. There's the drainage channel here as a slight indentation. But if the pedestrians have no idea that this is the bike path, there's nothing that shows it. And so if you're visually impaired, you would have no idea at all. And so we really ought to correct that. For MTD, they have been working to make some improvements, and the marketing and software development departments are working on improving the low vision access to the website and for the interior of the buses. And they're also submitting a federal grant to fund some exterior announcements. They have to have the software in order to do that. So at these really busy bus stops, for example, the Transit Plaza, you have multiple buses pulling up, and if you can't read the kiosk, you don't know which one's there. And so the buses would announce which bus it is, which would be really helpful for people who have visual limitations. So I just did a list of the recommendations that I think would be very helpful. Of course, add the truncated dome to the bus stop at green. Add green paint to the bike path at these locations so that it's clear. Some of the bus stops are not as busy, and the placement of the green rectangle does help delineate it. But if we can find the funding to do that with the university behind each of those bus stops, I think that would be very helpful. And at the very least, we should add the white line for the bike path for the Transit Plaza bus stop on the east side, because it is in no way marked as a bike path. And then talk to the cities and the university about standardizing the audio announcements at signalized intersections. That's something that maybe could go to CUATS for consideration. And then also maybe at CUATS have a conversation about how to put together a web page with information for people that provides them with information about how to get around by transit and signalized locations that have, good accessibility, et cetera. I'm sure that we can talk with Nancy and other folks who travel around the community that need this information. And Nancy has suggested that MTD would be the logical organization to host that since they're already upgrading their website. But that's something that would need to be further discussed, but it's a recommendation that we can offer. And so with that, I will stop sharing. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I want to thank Nancy for all the thought and information that she forwarded to me. And then I chatted with some people about it and talked with folks at MTD so that I could find out what is happening and most of what we are recommending here would involve the university. So that's something that we would need to figure out how to communicate that to them since we don't have SAR Talk here this meeting.
Okay. Nancy, did you have anything to add to that before I go to questions?
No, I guess I just, there were a number of things that I discovered this summer and spring that I had no idea that you could hear the schedule when you got to a certain bus stops. A fellow in a wheelchair told me where the button was and that there was one, and that's really helped immensely. And it just seemed, and there's nowhere on the MTD website can you find something like that. And there were some other things that I kind of learned through trial and error that it's just informational things that would be really easy to add to a website. So that was what began this.
Okay. I didn't see who was first. Audrey, go ahead.
Oh, I just wondered if I think the question maybe is answered. I was just wondering what we need to do to provide outreach from BPAC to the visually impaired community or other community about, about these changes, these improvements, or the ability to suggest improvements. But it sounds like MTD is going to host that outreach effort.
Well, they're working on upgrades to their website. Some of you may have seen that there was an article in the newspaper about this, in fact. And so they've been working with the federal government and hired consultants and been working very hard to improve the website accessibility. And then the things that I mentioned too, that they're also looking at trying to get a federal grant. So the buses also have announcements on them. And I think that they're open to the idea of having more of this information on the website. I sent all of Nancy's email information in our exchange to them. And Nancy, you'd already shared quite a bit of information previously, so they were already working on some of it.
We're just very fortunate to have Nancy on the commission to represent some of these concerns, which I'm afraid that otherwise we wouldn't know that outreach wouldn't be there.
Well, one thing that I pointed out to them, that I pointed out was crossing major intersections when the audio signals are like some places it says wait, and when you push it, and then it just says nothing. So if you space out, you can wait through an extra cycle because you were just waiting and you kind of spaced out and forgot to not wait. And so I requested that be done across the cities, and they said they would have to involve the governments, the city governments, because they don't own any of that property. And well, I can't remember what else I was going to say.
Well, some of the signals are cities. There are some signals that are the universities, and there are some signals that are IDOTs. Yeah. So we have 4 different entities that we need to have pulled together, which is why I think Kuwats would be the logical place for that conversation to occur. And maybe we can forward this to them. One of us could maybe attend a meeting and bring this to their attention. Or if you were willing to go, Nancy, I think that would be very helpful for them to have that. And they have public input at those meetings, so we could go there and provide that public input.
The other thing that I just remembered is it would be a perfect place to put the Public Works telephone number, because I have called Urbana Public Works multiple times to report audio signals that do not work, but many people don't know to do that, and I have no idea I have not looked up the number in Champaign, because usually by the time I get home from there, I have forgotten, but it's that would be a logical place to have the Public Works phone number.
Annie?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the CUMTD was sued by the federal government for not having an accessible enough website. And so that is the accessibility advocates on campus sent around that news release this week about that. So I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, and it was a complaint that was filed by someone, and then the feds then came to MTD. So it was several step process that occurred.
Yeah. So I'd like to say I work for the Granger College of Engineering now, and they have developed something called Site Manager, which is 100% accessible. It is built for accessibility, and it is fantastic. As a person who's been working in web design forever, who's worked on multiple programs, I cannot recommend Site Manager enough. And I don't know if there's a way, they're probably in the weeds at this point, and it's probably too late, but I am incredibly impressed with Site Manager. It not only is beautiful and easy to use, but it's accessible, because people who use public transit, who have low vision, I don't think as a community we want them driving. So I've always kind of found it funny when I see like the lack of accessibility for low vision users, because I'm like, these are folks that really should be, having other people drive them around. So anyway, I just wanted to mention the MTD accessibility. There is no sign where you showed the picture of there was no paint at the transit plaza. The other issue I have with that area is there is no sign telling you as a cyclist that you're approaching a space that people will be coming in and out of. And so it's that actually is a little bit of a sketchy area. And absolutely a standardized sound, because again, you're dealing with people that everyone doesn't speak the same language in this city. And I definitely think an accessible sound would be a much better idea, at least when I've experienced accessible sounds. So it would be a much better idea to just have a sound that was like, doo, or, something like that. And I'm sure if Kuatz or somebody came up with it, and it would be much better if it was everyone had them all the same thing. So instead of this, wait, which is really rude, frankly. So yeah, I definitely, if we're gonna have beg buttons and if we're gonna have that type of stuff out there, I definitely would appreciate if we could have just an accessible sound. And especially if you live by one of those, you're gonna hear, wait, all the time. So those would be my things. So thank you, Cynthia, that's really great. And thank you, Nancy, appreciate your help on all this.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, we're starting to get short on time, so we want to move on if we can. I wonder, do we want to make a motion to ask Cynthia and Nancy to present this to Kuatz, or are you okay with us just asking you?
If you would like for us to present it on behalf of BPAC, then we would want a motion, but if you would just like for us to share that we shared this with BPAC and we wanted to share it with Kuatz, we can do it that way. So it's up to the commission.
Okay. But I don't know if you need to, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Let's just do the roll call.
Okay.
I think so we would have a little more weight if.
Well, they need a motion.
I move that to QI.
Okay, Sue made a motion to request that Cynthia and Nancy present the recommendations to Kuatz.
On behalf of BPAC, and I'll second it.
And Jeff seconded. Could we have a roll call?
I just want to add something real quick. I was trying to look up the information while you guys were talking. We are putting new ped push buttons at Lincoln Springfield. and they're not installed right now, but it still calls the ped signal regardless of not being there. I believe, and this is me spitballing because I don't have the data since I'm at home. The APSs now are supposed to have a more standard tick, tick, tick. And I need to check the ones on university. So we may actually already be progressing. I mean, I'm not objecting to this motion. I'm just throwing it out there because it's important information. So I haven't verified it yet, but they are all new systems on both Springfield and then university. So.
Yeah, I've been trying out the university walks quite a bit, and they say wait. I'm pretty happy with them. I didn't actually notice if they ever told me to go after wait, though. I'll have to start paying attention to that. Okay, so could we have a roll call?
Bill Brown,
Yes.
Annie Adams,
Yes.
Shannon Baranik,
Yes.
Kara Dudek,
Yes.
Cynthia Hoyle,
Yes.
Audrey Ishii,
Yes.
Susan Jones,
Yes.
Jeff Marino,
Yes.
and Nancy Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Next on the agenda is bicycle traffic garden proposals. U of I community health groups have students have worked on a couple proposals they're going to share with us, one for King Park and one for Meadowbrook Park, I think. So should I just promote, is everybody here going to be promoting? I'll promote it.
The instructor for the class is here, Sarah Pearson, as well as some students, and I don't remember which students were doing which which ones. Sorry, but I did have the opportunity to see these, so I'm excited for them to share them with you. I think there's some really interesting ideas here.
Okay, I'm in the process of promoting everybody. Hopefully, yeah. A couple people hasn't worked. Sarah, did you want to introduce the first group? Hi.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting my students to come speak. They did an excellent job, put a lot of work into these projects. So I will start with Ruchira and Sarah's group. We'll start with you first, and then we'll go Mariah and Jenna after that. And are they able to share their screen?
I think so. I promoted them to panelist if that's all it takes.
Okay.
Yeah, give me 1 second to share my screen. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Okay. I just wanted to say that there are quite a few people who worked on this project. Only 2 of us are presenting it today. Oops, I think I hit the wrong button. Okay.
Okay, awesome. So we will go ahead and get started. So this is group 7. We're going to be talking to you guys about our bicycle garden proposal. And my name is Sarah Shaheen. I'm a junior studying community health at the University of Illinois. And Rashira, if you just want to do a quick intro.
I'm Ruchira. I'm also studying community health at U of I.
And yeah, we just want to say thank you guys for letting us come present to you today.
Okay, so just for some background and overview, a bicycle traffic garden is a place where students or children can learn how to ride a bike for the first time. You'll see some pictures of our design layout in the future, but they basically can become familiar with the rules of the road before they try it out in real life. And we think this helps promote safety in that they are in a safe environment to try riding a bike, learning how to ride a bike. It would be open to the entire community, but it's primarily for children age kindergarten to 12th grade. And health impacts, or hopefully it'll help reduce some accidents on the road.
So next we'll be talking about the location. So we chose the Meadowbrook Park for our traffic garden. And this is located by Windsor and Ray Street for those of you that don't know. The reason we chose this is because we saw this location have a lot of benefits. One of them being that there's a lot of green open spaces. And another great benefit to it is that there are great features such as a playground, amazing scenery there. There's space for families to have picnics and just hang out there. There's also garden plots, and we believe that the addition to or adding a bicycle garden there would be a great addition to this location. A huge other benefit was that it's located by a residential area. So that would be easy access for families and parents to bring their children to come and learn how to be a safe bicyclist. Another thing was that it's located near the university's campus. I know a lot of students come out to this area to go on walks, but we also deem this to be a great opportunity for students to volunteer and get involved with the community itself. Students are always looking for volunteer work, so this could be one of those projects that they can step on and start volunteering at. And we also believe that the garden would promote a safe and healthy environment for parents and, most importantly, the children. And it also just promotes utilization of the park and its many other great features.
Another huge benefit of this is that Meadowbrook is trying to they're redeveloping the area, so we wouldn't even have to buy the land, which is a huge cost associated with creating a traffic garden. And they will also already have had like bike racks and parking spaces, so that just decreases the cost that it would take to build a traffic garden.
Yeah, and just adding on really quickly to a huge benefit. I grew up in this area. I grew up in a town a little outside of Urbana, and this park is super popular in the area. Get her, Shira. So it's, like I said, a very popular park. So that's another reason we think that this location is a prime location, just because everyone knows this park and it's part of many people's childhood. So.
Okay. So here's a brief sketch. I'm not a professional at all, so this is like a rough sketch of what this could look like, layout. In our design for a bicycle garden, we included crosswalks to educate children on how and where to cross safely. It's kind of hard to see in this, but there's 3 here. We also included multiple stop signs, the red dots, I guess they look like in here, but there are multiple stop signs to teach them how to use them properly. Additionally, there are various roundabouts so that children can understand signage and how to safely exit and enter them. There are also one-way streets where students could learn how one-way streets reduce traffic. Additionally, we have a parking lot, a small one for people who maybe specifically want to go to the bicycle garden. We also added a border for safety measures, just because we did put a parking area. We just don't want students to like get confused by the borders and end up like using their bike in trafficked areas.
So next we'll go over the financial overview specifically for the park. So we have products dimensions and the final cost of the product. So for stop signs, we researched and found that'd be $25.85 per unit. We need about 7 of those units, which would total in $180.95. Then we need stoplights, which would be $52.99 per unit. We estimated about 4 units of those, which again would result in $211.96. For the pay and supplies labor, we weren't able to get an accurate number on that, so we skipped over it, but we'd estimate about 10,000 square feet of that and just guessed a total of $2,500. We'd want rubber flooring, so that's going to be approximately $6 per square feet. We'd want about 10,000 of that, and that'd be $59,900. And then for the bicycle traffic garden location sign, that's going to be $109.95. That's going to be super important to have, just so parents and people utilizing it know where it's at. And we said that that would be 24 inches by 48 inches. So with all of this added together, it's going to be $62,002.86.
Another really great part of this is that the stop signs and the stoplights would be 3D features, and during like maybe regular hours and then maybe a little bit after school and over the weekend, volunteers from U of I students are always looking for a way to volunteer within the community. They could man those places, so we reduce costs on like labor of hiring people to man the location. We also did a financial overview of the parking lot, which is something we added just in case it's not incredibly necessary, because the Meadowbrook like garden already has parking spots, but we added like 10 additions. Asphalt is about $3 a square foot for 4,000 square feet, would total to $12,000. Paving and labor costs are about $1.75 per square foot. For 4,000 square feet is $7,000. Parking line installations, so it's like painting and stuff, is about 25 cents per linear foot. 290 linear feet would total to $73. Curbside painting would be about 75 cents per linear foot. 90 linear feet would be $68. And then installation for parking lot lights for nighttime, so that it's not completely dark, is about $1,000 per light. So a total to $2,000. And the total cost for the entire parking lot would be about $21,000, yeah.
So next is options for fundings. The group was able to research 3 different ways to bring in money for this project to happen. The first one being grants. So we were able to find grants from the federal, state, and local level. For the federal, there's a website called grants.gov, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but we saw that it had over 1,000 options for grants, which was awesome to see. Just to see that there's a variety that you can apply to. Next would be the Illinois Department of Public Health. This is deemed as a public health issue, so there's no reason why they wouldn't want to fund this awesome project with a great benefit behind it. And lastly, the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, they do, I believe, give out grants as well. So we would reach out to them and explain to us our project, and hopefully they would help us with the grant process. Next, we learned this in class, so shout out to Dr. Pearson. But we found that individuals donate the most, and that's seen here in this chart. And the 3 groups here are, again, the individuals, foundations, corporations, and Besquis, I believe. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. But yeah, the individuals donate the most. And we thought that that would be a great group to target, specifically parents or people that advocate for public health or just bicycle safety would want to contribute to this project. And then lastly, we were able to find this program through the University of Illinois, specifically through the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research Administration, also known as OSPRA. Essentially, what we were able to conduct from our research is that they sponsor programs that people apply for. I believe last year they were able to give out $796 million for the project they were sponsored. And since we are a research campus, they're always looking for new projects to bring into campus. And so we figured that our idea would be a great proposal for them. There is a process you have to go through for them to approve you and see how much funding they want to give you and all of that stuff. But this is definitely, we believe, a strong option, especially being University of Illinois students. We thought this was a great opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I do research in community health and like the community health department. And I was talking to my principal investigator about this, and this was totally something that would be within the realm of like interest, maybe on the idea of how bicycle traffic gardens can reduce accidents in the community. Okay. And for some community partners, there's a ton of bicycle clubs and organizations around Champaign County that I'm not super familiar with the area, but I did a decent amount of research. For instance, one is Champaign County Bikes. Why would they want to get involved? They have goals about fulfilling diversity in cyclists' age and socioeconomic status, and a bicycle traffic garden would do just that. They don't even need to do monetary contributions. If they could donate maybe a few bikes for people who are maybe can't afford them but still want to learn how to ride a bike, that would be great. The Urbana Park District is a community partner. We would be partnering with them to build this bike garden in their park and in their jurisdiction. Their mission, part of their mission is to provide a variety of special facilities to improve quality of life. And we think a bike garden would do just that. It's a very unique concept that doesn't already exist in Urbana that I know of. And the University of Illinois, why would they get involved? They're always looking for opportunities to have students volunteer at locations like this. And this would be a great opportunity for students to volunteer at. And it would also create a strong connection between children in the community and the university, which is always a good thing.
And just to add quickly, so for the University of Illinois, to give you guys a specific example, there's a group on campus called Enactus, and I believe they do non-for-profit work, but some of my close friends are working on this project this year where they brought in broken bicycles or just unused bicycles and just revamped them. And then they gave them to underserved populations, specifically children within Champaign County, and gave them as gifts. And just like a thought would be to partner up with that RSO, which is called Enactus again, so they can utilize the bike garden to show these kids how to properly use the bikes and how to be safe on the roads when they do get to that point of having those bikes. So like Rashir was saying, there's a lot of opportunities, and University of Illinois is very passionate about helping the community. So
yeah, and this way we can bridge the problem of that some people may not have bikes. That's a disparity, and that's something we would want to work on. And if we can find a way to provide bikes for them, that would be great. And then here are just some of our references. We wrote a whole paper on this as well, so which goes into far more detail. But thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, we will do our best to answer them.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have time for maybe one or two quick questions. Anybody have a quick question?
Okay, well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, wait, I was going to ask, like, where in Meadowbrook Park would you envision this? I know Meadowbrook Park is replacing the current playground structure that's there. That big castle structure is actually being replaced. So that to me seems like the natural location in that whole area. That's where a lot of the hubbub is. But Meadowbrook, I'm just curious if you had a location for it or if you didn't. That was more and thank you. This was great, by the way.
I think when we were envisioning this, it was actually behind the playground. If you know that open space where people often went and did picnics, we thought that was just perfect because the kids could just see it and be like, oh, mom, dad, let's go try this out. But I don't know much about the revamping and reconstruction that they're doing, so that might not be possible if they're going to be using up more space. So yeah.
I was thinking more they could work it into the entire new structure.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I wasn't super sure. I'm not super familiar with this area. I'm from California, but yeah, I was thinking that I had heard that they were revamping it, and on their website they have plans to redo the area. So if it could be worked in or incorporated in some kind of way, that would be really cool.
Okay, I think Kara, our Park District representative, had her hand up.
Yeah, I'm park planner for the Park District, so this was really interesting for me to see. I was just going to give like a spatial reference. The footprint of the existing playground is just under 14,000 square feet. And I can't remember, you had some lump sum for like 10,000 square feet in your presentation. So it would, be sizable in comparison to where the playground is. And it's an interesting complementary use to Meadowbrook because there's a lot of paths there already, and a lot of people are there riding their bikes. I think that one concern would be crossing Windsor with kids, but I understand that people come in all sorts of ways. And then on really high use days, it's almost too popular. So adding another amenity, how do you sort of balance those things? So those are just some site considerations from my perspective, but I did like how you were sort of taking a captive audience that is playground and park users and, sort of having a built-in user group in addition to bringing in new people.
Thank you. And I know you're running out of time, but I was thinking if we have to incorporate in some kind of way these circle areas where we were just planning on making them grassy areas or something like that, but they could have play structures that way. Maybe students will learn how to be mindful of their surroundings and mindful of pedestrians and other people who are using the areas that they're working in.
Yeah, and I would say I've always imagined that something like this would be great at Crystal Lake Park because there's a lot of room at Crystal Lake, but I loved how you worked it into Meadowbrook. It never would have even occurred to me to add this to it, but I could see it working really well. But I know, yeah, not a lot of space there at the moment.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So let's move on to the other group. Another park.
Hi, my name is Mariah, and I also will be presenting with Jenna today. So let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So let me present.
Jenna and Mariah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also saying we also did do this with a couple other people, and it's just us two presenting, but we want to give them credit too.
Yes. So we'll just be going over the background, location, the design and layout, and then we'll wrap it up with the finances. Just for a little background, as you all know, bike riding is a very efficient form of transportation, and depending on the location and road conditioning, bike riding can be very difficult, especially if you're in an area where there is not a lot of bike lanes or very bumpy roads. With the implementation of bicycle gardens, it will offer a safe, centralized location to promote school-age children to learn how to ride a bike. And it will additionally decrease the risk for bicycle-related accidents. And with the bicycle gardens, it will promote students to learn how to ride a bike and make them more eager to ride a bike as well at an earlier age. And learning how to ride a bike is beneficial to a person's overall health, and through that, it improves motor skills by strengthening endurance and coordination. And overall, consistent bicycle riding will lower the risk for obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and other health ailments.
And for our bicycle garden, we felt that King Park was a good location for us. King Park is about an 8-acre park on the northwest side of Urbana, and it's the nearest main street is Lincoln Avenue. And we discussed the feasibility of this park with the park district manager, Andy, and he sent us an email back saying the pros of having a bicycle garden in King Park, and he expressed that it was good that King Park was right next to it, so we could also ask them if we could use their parking lot, so we wouldn't have to build a new parking lot. And then another pro would be that we would be serving an underserved part of the town. And there's a walking path that already exists in the park. And bike lanes are also on nearby streets. So it would be easily accessible for families who do ride their bike to the park.
And then to go over the design and layout, we have a Google Maps picture here. So we already have the walking trail. So we just wanted to include the little bicycle path within the park area. So it's very realistic. It's already on a carved out path. So we would just put the asphalt on top, which we will go over more in detail in the finance aspect. So they're very accessible with street parking in the school parking lot nearby. And with the little curves and turns, it'll make it easier for students or for young children to learn how to make turns with their bicycles, which is very important because riding straight is good, but you still need to learn how to turn. And we'll also have the implementation of stop signs, one-way signs, stop lights to help young children learn how to when to stop the bike and when to go and to yield to other bike riders. And also with it already being within a park, that also promotes safety because it's not directly on a main street. I feel that especially in areas that aren't the safest, there's kind of don't want to have your children out there riding their bikes, but I feel like within a park area right by an elementary school, this will promote families from all parts of Urbana and Champaign, or even other small towns nearby, to come to this park and teach their young children how to ride their bike.
Okay, and for finances, we felt that mock roads, 3D obstacles, traffic lights, painting and supplies, and potential repairs were our main focuses. So for mock roads, we estimated that it will take about 1 to 1.5 acres of King Park. And on average, we found that it costs $10,000 to $12,000 to pave 1 acre. So we estimated about $12,000 to $15,000 to just make the mock roads with pavement. And then for the 3D obstacles, I was like kind of online searching, and I found like a package that was a stop sign, pedestrian walking sign, crossroad, one way, and a parking sign, and that package was $500. Traffic lights, we found them for $100 each, and we felt like we needed 4 so there could be a whole intersection. And those were battery operated, so we also have to keep in mind that the batteries need to be replaced. And then for the paint and supplies, we estimated to need 25 gallons of paint to make markings on the street and to have decorations. So overall, we put $1,000 for that, for the paint and the supplies. And then for repairs, we also set aside $1,000. So overall, we were in between $30,000 and $40,000 for the overall price of the bicycle garden.
And to just briefly go over community partners, we were thinking of the Don Moyer Boys and Girls Club. This will help bring forth volunteers and even young children to help to utilize the park, especially, and the park district, at the Urbana Park District as well, to help with funding and provide workers. And the Big Brother and Sister Foundation, which will help again bring more volunteers and children to use the park as well. And also for one grant, Walmart offers community grants ranging from $250 to $5,000. So we were thinking of reaching out to Walmart and applying and submitting an application for that to see how much money we can receive for that funding from that grant to help offset some costs as well.
We also did write a paper, and I'm pretty sure we did include more different types of grants in it that were larger grants.
So yeah, we just have our references here, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start out with a question on an acre of pavement. Sometimes, I mean, the park district actually has to pay for stormwater detention like everybody else in the city does. So it's based on the area of impervious surface. So that would boost their stormwater detention bill quite a bit. Probably an acre of pavement would probably be equivalent to about 20 homeowners, additional homes. So is there any way to reduce that pavement surface area?
Well, Bill, you could also use pavement that is permeable. For a project like this, the wear and tear on it's reasonably low. I don't know where the technology is with that right now, but I know that there are places that are using that.
Yeah, that would help. Was that acre, was that just the road surface, or did that was your plan to pave a bigger area and then the road surface would be drawn out on that?
It was just like the road surface, so it would be like grass on the sides, yeah.
Yeah, wow. I like the location and the connectivity with the school. I think the school could really use something like that. with on during recess and physical education classes and things like that. Other comments, questions?
I agree with the adjacency to the elementary school. I think that's a really smart location, different than the Meadowbrook group, but also smart. I do agree. We tend to go green space over gray space. So any way to limit those impacts is important. And I think also, I don't know if you looked at demographics at all, but I think that's a neighborhood that would really benefit from something like that. As far as just a new amenity and a transportation-based amenity and safety and just something to rally around. And it's also very close to the border with Champaign too. So you're not just serving Urbana residents, but some Champaign too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. I hope everyone has a happy holiday.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item. Yeah. Oh, and Sarah, thank you for bringing your class and for having them developing their interest in bicycle gardens.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. Our last item is bicycle parking presentation from Kat. You still want to do that, Kat? It's getting late. It's up to you.
Yeah, it won't be long. I actually don't have any formal presentation prepared. I just wanted to make sure that BPAC's questions from last meeting were formally answered. I thought a memo was the best way to do that and provide you with our current zoning ordinance language. And then the excerpt from the bicycle master plan that I think applies best to the bicycle parking design and layout and how that would apply in updates to the zoning ordinance going forward. So like I said, don't really have a formal presentation. If you guys have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But that's about it.
Okay. I don't know if anybody from the public is watching or could be watching later. The memo you provided is available online with the meeting materials for tonight's meeting if people are interested in reading it. I found it really useful. It's been a while since I'd read that part of the bicycle plan, and I don't know if I would agree with some of the things that are in there now that they put in there 6 years ago, but I think the current ordinance handles quite a bit. But if anyone has comments or wants to put this on a future agenda, I did have one question. You sort of were asking for guidance or offering the opportunity for guidance. I wasn't sure how strong that was as far as if you guys are considering text amendments in this area and want specific guidance, or is that just kind of a general invitation on if we have suggestions to improve that area?
I would consider that more of a general invitation. That's something that I think kind of came up at last month's meeting. If BPAC wanted to make a formal recommendation, I think planning staff would be open to incorporating things that have already been incorporated into the bicycle master plan. But again, that's completely up to you guys. We will take direction if you have it.
Okay. I know Jeff brought up some questions last month. Did you want to address any of those, Jeff?
Well, I will say, Kat, I really enjoyed the report. Thank you for putting that together. I really appreciate the work you did on that. Did have a couple questions. When was the current text for the bicycle parking adopted? Do you know?
I believe that was after the bicycle master plan was published in 2016. I could look at the amendments, but I don't have that readily available.
Do you remember if the BPAC got an opportunity to review this before it went to Plan Commission and went City Council?
This was before my time. I think this was when Kevin was still on BPAC. So he would probably know better than I would. I believe this did come directly from BPAC in or before 2016, but that is speculative.
It was probably before, I don't know how much change there was in that part of the master plan from the earlier version, but I don't remember anything in the past 5 years on bicycle parking coming through BPAC.
Yeah, that I would agree. I don't remember seeing this. And I did see in the report that the their bicycle master plan had made some recommendations, and then the report kind of implied that this was subsequent to that, but I don't recall seeing anything. So maybe it makes me lead me to believe that this was in place prior to the adoption of the bicycle plan. Either way, I would say that if there were changes made to this part of the code, I do think that BPAC should weigh in prior to it going to Plan Commission, even though the bylaws may not specifically state that. But yeah, no, I do think that there's a couple of tweaks that could be made to the current code to address quality of the bicycle parking and maintenance. So for example, the code doesn't say anything about, you put in the bicycle parking and then 5 years it's all rusted and falling apart. Does the city have any leverage to go back and, cite them for a zoning violation to say, hey, this is all rusted out. You need to, replace this. A property owner could say, well, it doesn't say I have to maintain it. Well, it just says I have to install it, or I don't know, whatever. So there could be a couple of, verbiage added to the code for maintenance, covered parking, bicycle lockers. I also saw that there's a maximum number of parking spaces. So, if there's a land use that requires 1,000 car parking spaces, it said in the code that only 25 bicycle parking spaces would be required at most. So, there's a disconnect there. You're probably not going to get 400 cyclists at one time, but still, if you have, I don't know, day after Christmas, parking lot full of cars, if you're going to get that many cyclists, but it may be something to think about. Again, if there's a certain number of spaces, then it maybe ratchet up the quality of parking. So if you have to go over 25 spaces, then maybe you require some additional covered spaces or bike lockers or spaces inside the building or whatever, I don't know, additional amenities for cyclists. But yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate for a text amendment right now, but I do think down the road, if this part of the code is being tweaked, I think there's room for improvement there.
Yeah, I would agree that if we were to make changes to this in the near future or in the future at all, that it should come to BPAC before Plan Commission, and that's something I'll bring up to our other planners as well.
I was happy to see provisions for if there is a redevelopment. It seemed like it was based on how many, either a change in use or a substantial expansion, or maybe based on square foot of expansion, I forget. I know when Dairy Queen put in their outside eating area, I asked about if that would require them to put in bike parking, and that didn't. So there might be some wiggle room there to improve that a little bit. But they did talk to them and try to get them. I don't know if they ended up adding any there or not. The only real complaints I have about where people put their parking, I don't mind walking more than 50 feet. I think one of the regulations, I don't remember if that was in the bike plan recommendations or in the actual ordinance, with 50 feet from the front door. I think like the parking at iHotel is farther than that, but I think it's well placed. You can see it when you're riding around. There's just not enough of it. The only other complaint I've really had about where it's located is it seems like people like to put them by dumpsters, and maybe they don't realize that there tends to be broken glass by dumpsters, and people on bicycles don't like broken glass. So if there's some way to tell them they can't put it by dumpsters, I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeff's concern about maintenance, and I think location and maintenance can go together. The Carl on Windsor in Urbana, the bike parking is in a parking spot, and it has been run into by cars. At one point, there was one of the racks was bit into the other racks for months and months and months. I complained, and they finally came out. And instead of replacing that bike rack and putting it in a better location, they just removed the bent one. So they reduced the number of bike parking spaces. And I'm not going to park my expensive electric assist bike out there because I'm concerned cars are going to run into it. So I always park by the door and behind the bench. And so I think that's I think it's something that we ought to revisit in the future and have more in-depth discussion with all the information that Kat provided us. We can sort of dig in and come up with some recommendations.
Bill, I'd like to mention that it's 9:04 and our bylaws say that our meetings will end at 9.
Okay, I think if there's a motion to extend, we can do that. There's really nothing else on the agenda except for announcements and future topics. I'd say if people have announcements or future topics, you could send them to Barb and she could send them out unless there's something you can work in real quick that you want public, the one person from the public who's watching to hear. Okay, I think we're finished then. Thank you all very much. Have a good holiday and I'll see you next year. This meeting's adjourned.
Happy